All right, guys, it is July 12th, 2020. I think it's the 12th. Maybe it's 11th. Got a calendar over here. I'll just take a look. It is the 12th, July 12th, 2020. So, on the road on my Thrash, on my 55, pretty happy with progress so far. Actually, I should rephrase that. I'm really, really happy with progress so far. I have been busy since my last video. Also, I'm going to kind of give a few tips and tricks on this subject I'm getting ready to cover here. But anyway, check that out. The body shell is painted. This is Nason, which is made by DuPont, single stage urethane. Part number 400-01, I believe. Yeah, 400-01, full thing. So, first time using this one, but it looks pretty good. I may have used this a long time ago and just don't remember. But anyway, so it turned out pretty decent. I mean, it's the high humidity in Oklahoma sucks. So it doesn't matter what time of day you paint, your humidity's high. So paint is going to get dry spray in it, especially when you're doing a body shell. When you're trying to do all your jams, your window channels, your door jams, hinges, you're going to get dry spray. So it doesn't matter to me because I'm going to sand and buff. And also being a garage painter, I get trash in the paint. So anyway, I've got a lot of work to do. It's not how good of a painter you are, it's how good of a buffer you are, in my opinion. So anyway, I'll run you through what I got going on here now. So I have sanded the body, the outer rockers, quarters, the tail pan around the taillights, the lower deck panel, all with 1000 grit. I then went to the roof with 1000, started sanding on it, and I just decided to go ahead and do the roof and get it done. That way I can kind of wrap it up in some of this thin plastic I have here and be done with it. I'm over it, and then I can continue on all this other stuff. And if by chance I, sand through or buff through an edge or something on any other part of the car, I can repaint that part. I don't have to mess with the roof. The roof is separated from a lot of stainless, so it has perfect tape breaks to just not even have to mess with it again. So what I have found out, for a fact, I stated this in a video like last week or 2 weeks ago, I have heard from old school painters that single stage urethane black, sanded and buffed, looks better than base coat clear coat black, buffed. I'm going to agree 100% without a doubt, because, other than my fingerprint mark there, that is stage 1 compound. That has not even been stage 2, stage 3, and it's not been glazed yet. That is going to get 3 times, 4 times better. That is going to look awesome. It does look deeper and more, I guess, rich. I don't know if that's the word I would say, but to me it just looks better. Because you got to remember, this car was base coat, clear coat black. I painted it that last summer, and I sanded and buffed it. And although it did look good when it was done, it just lacked that pop that this has. This is just plain black, no metallics, no pearls, just plain black. I love it. This thing is going to look awesome. So at this point now, I'm dare I say, I'm glad I got solvent pop and had to sand it all down and redo it. Because not only did I get to fix my low spot around my gas door, I got this result over the last one. So, and this being my unicorn car and being real special to me by how I acquired it, I'm in love, man. This is awesome. Anyway, so I'll get to what I was wanting to get to. So a couple days ago, I had an older gentleman stop by. He's a buddy of mine. He stops by every once in a while. Now, he is an old car guy, and he has buffed cars before, but he's never sanded and buffed a car. He's just like brought old paint back, He's a little old school, Anyway, he stopped by here the other day, and I was actually started sanding on the car. And of course, he was trying to tell me not to sand and buff it, just leave it the way it was. I was like, there's no way. But anyway, so he got to asking me all kinds of questions about sanding and buffing. So I ended up telling him, because I'm trying to work, I wanted to be nice. I didn't even want to be like, get the hell out of here, man. I'm trying to work, But anyway, it ended up wasting an hour of my time. But I told him, get on YouTube. There's millions of videos. Well, you know what I mean. There's tons of videos on YouTube how to color sand and buff paint. I mean, it's granted every one of them is going to be different probably because it's the same way in the auto body world and probably just about everything. Everybody does things differently. It's the way it is. So he ended up asking me tons more questions anyway. One of them he actually asked me at the first was, where did I learn to buff? And I told him right away because it's ingrained in my mind and I'll never forget it. Back when I was really young, probably 21 years old, I had a 55 two-door post car. I had painted it orange. It was just plain orange, no metallic or pearl. And it paint laid down good. It looked wonderful. And my dad come outside with his buffer and some sandpaper, and he done an area of that car. And he goes, now come and look at this. And I walked over there, and he held a cigarette package, the back side of it, where it has all the little tiny lettering and words, you know, the stuff that says it kills your ass and stuff like that. He held it up to that paint a few inches away from it. You could read it through that paint. So that was it for me. Every car after that got sanded and buffed, because you can make a garage paint car look like $1 million, man. That is proof, because I am in a garage. So anyway, so what he wanted me to do, because he watches my channel, this older guy, he wanted me to do a video on how I buff. And I told him, no, I'm not going to do it, because a long time ago, 10, 11, 12 years, somewhere around there, I did a black car. And I was on a car forum as a member, and I had a build thread on there on that car. And I sanded and buffed it, and it was black. And it turned out just like that. It turned out awesome. And I was proud of it. Not saying I'm a badass, you know, strutting my stuff. I'm just proud. When I do something, I'm proud, man. I want to show it off. So anyway, I put it in the build thread. At that time, I was doing pictures, so I posted pictures. Well, a couple of the guys on the forum replied, and they wanted to know exactly how I did it from start to finish. So that was my mistake. I went through there and I put it in detail how I did it. Then here come all the internet know-it-alls, all the internet professionals, the keyboard professionals, I'll call them. Here they come. Well, you could have done this. You should have done this. And why did you do this? You should have done this. And I had results like that. So that was it for me. No more did I ever describe how I buffed. I may do somebody asked a question and I would tell them what brand or product or whatever, but I would never do a full tutorial again, because it's just like painting a car. Everybody does it different. And like when I do it, when I would see somebody else do it, I think it's the wrong way, and that's the way they think. So anyway, if it works for me, I'm going to keep doing it that way, and that's why I've done a ton of black cars. And so black is the hardest to do. I don't care what anybody says. If you can buff a black car and make it look good under lights, you're a badass, I promise you. Because it ain't about how good you can paint, it's about how good you can buff. So anyway, so what I've decided to do, instead of doing a full tutorial on sanding and buffing so everybody can tell me that I'm an idiot and don't know what I'm doing, I decided I'm just going to give a few tips. And this is for the garage guy, the DIY guy, not the professional that's been doing it for 40 freaking years. Because I don't give a shit how you do it. This is how I do it. So when it's fresh paint, it sands and buffs easier. I don't care what anybody says. So general rule of thumb, if you have a car done at a professional shop that has a fancy paint booth that bakes them, they probably start somewhere in the neighborhood of about 600 grit. Probably. Because that baking the paint hardens that paint. Me being in a garage, I rely on Mother Nature to cure my paint. So this paint is softer than what would have been done in a bake booth. So this paint sands and buffs easier. Now with that comes a lot of trouble. You got to really be careful. When you start sanding fresh paint, what's it do? It gums the paper up. So you can wash that paper 20,000 times to do one little 2-foot section, you're still going to get contaminant. That paint is going to cut itself while you're sitting there sanding with it. So there's nothing you can do. You just got to keep going, light pressure, don't bear down. That's all I can say. So I do 1,000 grit sandpaper. I skip to 1,000 because the paint's fresh, it cuts faster. I go to 1,500. I go to 2,000, 2,500. That's where I stop with my papers on blocks. Now use a block if you're doing like a roof and a quarter panel. Use a block, because if you try to use your hand with the paper rolled up, you're going to get the high sides and low sides of your hand. You're going to get lumpiness is what you're going to get. So use a sponge block. Keep it wet. Dawn dish soap and water in a spray bottle works awesome. And then I like to have a little bucket like that one right there with soapy water in it, and I splash that pad in there work a little bit and splash it. Now, if it's down on the ground or someplace that's awkward, I'll have my spray bottle nearby and I'll pull it up and I'll shoot it with the other hand. I'll shoot that paper off with that spray bottle. That does well at knocking the contaminants out of the paint, but it doesn't get it all out. So I stop at 2,500 doing blocks. Then I go to these sanding pads for a DA, a little foam pad, probably close to 1/4 inch thick. I usually use Trizact, I think is the name of it, pads. They're thinner. They're also more expensive, but when I went to the paint store, this is all they had. They were out of the Trizact, so I got these. I don't know how you say that, Mirka. Anyway, so me being stuck in my ways and liking the same thing, I had to try these. That's all they had, and I got to say I'm kind of impressed with them. They pretty much do the same thing, but I think what I like better about them is that thicker foam pad. It makes me feel a little bit more comfortable coming around these edges and around the rolled edges of the roof and stuff. So this is going to be awesome on a round-ass 55 Chevy, you know. So I'm kind of glad I got these. But I got these from 3,000, 4,000, and 5,000 grit. So get your DA out, put your 3,000 pad on there, turn that DA speed up. You want that DA speed high. I'm not saying maxed out, but you want it pretty high and you want to move quick. And what I did was I broke the roof down into sections, like say 3 foot. 3 foot section here, 3 foot section here, and then the front section there. The other side is 3 more sections. So there's 6 total sections. So I did that 3,000 grit with soapy water on the spray bottle, did the pad and the roof, and I did a pass all the way to me and then started back. You want to do around 5 passes minimum. And as soon as you're done with it, take a wet microfiber, wipe it down, and then take a dry microfiber and dry it. Or if it's hot out here like this, it dries quickly. And then I look at my lights in my paint and I follow it in that paint job. I'm not looking deep into the paint, I'm kind of looking off of it a little bit. That light will show every imperfection, any tracers that were left, which is sand scratches from contaminated paint going one direction with a block. So you want to go again with that 3,000 pad until you get those out. Now again, high speed and keep her moving. Don't slow down and don't stop or you're going to get those little hook marks that DAs like to leave. Anyway, so I did that. Once it's all nice looking in the light, you got no scratches, move on to your 4,000. You could probably get away with about 5 passes, you know, and you're good. And then go to your 5,000 and do 5 passes. I can tell you one thing. Back in the old days when I started, I think 2,500 or 3,000, I can't remember, was as far as I went on my sandpapers. And you'd have to use a wool pad to try to get a shine out of that on stage 1. It took a lot of work to get it to shine because you didn't have it sanded very far. Well, nowadays you can get 5,000. I think they make even higher than that. I think I've seen 8,000, but I'm not 100%. But I have 5,000 here. It's all I got, so that's what I'm using. That 5,000 will polish that paint just about. It'll give it a shine. So as soon as you put the compound on that one and get your buffer on it, it hits a shine that quick. So you don't have to sit there and work it and get swirl marks and holograms all in the damn paint. So that's a nice little tip right there in itself. So anyway, I got just the old regular old DeWalt buffer. You know, I got the speed setting on 1400. Everybody's different. Again, don't care how you do it. That's how I do it. The buffing pads that I use are Lake Country pads. I get them off eBay. You can get a whole set on there of the compound stage 2 and stage 3 pads. It's a I think it's a 6-pack or something they call it, or 9-pack. I don't remember. I bought them last year, but anyway, it's like $50. So you get all your pads in one shot, and I kind of like the 6.5 inch instead of the really big pads, and then I like to hold that pad completely flat. I don't ever tilt it up at an angle, ever. I keep it flat. Kicking it up on an angle is just asking to get holograms and swirl marks, in my opinion. And the other thing I use is 3M Perfected Polish. Again, 10 million of them on the market, different brands. This is just what I use. I have a little number 1 on this one, and then there's number 2 and number 3. Anybody that buffs cars knows if that looks that good in stage 1, when it gets 2 and 3 put on it and then a hand glaze, that is gonna be awesome. That is, these little local shows I go to, that is a best paint award coming right there. Again, not trying to sound like an asshole. You put in the time, you get the shine. That's the old school saying right there. So A few more tips and tricks I want to give. And again, this is just what I do. You can do it however in the hell you want to do it. So when I'm working in here, buffing a car, I have the door shut. I don't want to buff in the yard, out in the driveway, because the wind's blowing. It'll blow shit on the paint while you're doing your work, and something will get under there and scratch the shit out of it, and you're going to start over. So I close the door and I work in here. Now I string my garden hose underneath the door, and that's a dark gray color. So that sun is cooking the hell out of that hose. So that water gets hot. Not for very long, but long enough to rinse off what I'm working on. Because you can see from that funky goop right there, that's where I'm rinsing off my these sanding pads for the DA and my buffing pads. I use the sprayer and shoot it with the jet and just rinse it off. And anyway, so that's how I clean them. Now I'll say this. Those 3-foot sections you do with the DA pads or a buffing pad on your polisher, every time I make that 5th pass and I'm done to check it, I rinse off those pads. I wash them in that hose right there. And then, when you rinse them off, you get a lot of your contaminants off, which in this case is black paint because I'm doing single stage. But when you're done, hold it down in that bucket and hit the trigger, and it slings it up here on the sides instead of slinging it all over you and all over the car and making a hell of a mess. So keep that in mind. So the other thing I do always, cleanliness is key when you're buffing. You want to keep it clean. I use a microfiber rag, and I have a bucket, and it's just plain water. And I use this like when I get done, like if I sand a 3-foot section, I'll wipe it all down with a wet rag, and then I'll take this over here and I'll dip it down in that water and then wring it out and go back over it again. So I constantly have clean water, and I change this out pretty regularly. I'll get to where like these get pretty full and dirty, and I'll open the door and dump them out here in the yard. So I'm trying to just give tips and tricks that might help another garage guy out. Again, don't care how you do it. This is how I do it. I do plan on having this done today, the roof, I hope. This will pretty much be 2 days into it. I need to finish doing my drip rail edges down in here. Of course, you can't machine polish down inside that drip rail, obviously, so you got to do it all by hand, and it really kind of sucks. It's a little tedious, and it is dangerous. I tell you that right now, because when you're painting a drip rail on probably a lot of cars, especially a Tri-5 Chevy, when you're trying to get paint in there, you really can't get paint because that thing curves over this way. So you can't get paint up in that back edge. So the last thing you want to do is put compound on all over the whole rag and then go down in there and do that, because you're going to get primer on the back side of that drip rail, and it's going to shine in that black chrome looking paint right there. So what I do is I take that little section of microfiber, I cut it with scissors, cut a little square, and I'll put a line of that #1 compound on there, and I will stick that dry side to the outside of that drip rail, stuff it down in there, and then I'll work that like that. So that way you just got a dry microfiber against the back of that drip rail, and you're not going to take that thin ass paint all the way to primer right off the bat. So just what I do, don't care what you do. Can't be more clear than that. So I'm going to finish this side. I think I might have pretty good, but the other side drip rail's still dull. I still got to go over there and pretty much start on it. Anyway, I plan on having the roof done today, and then I'm going to probably continue on the rear of the car and go to 15, and then 2,000, 2,500, then hit it with the sponge pads. And then at that point, I think I'm going to go ahead and kick to the firewall and go ahead and get it sanded down, and then I'll try to buff it all in one whack. But anyway, if you are on a budget where, most professional shops, they use brand new pads, buffing pads, they don't wash pads. It is kind of dangerous. Pads get contaminated, and you can wash this living crap out of them. You're still not going to get it all out, especially foam pads. You can spur the hell out of a wool pad, but I don't do wool pads anymore because all they ever did was get holograms for me or buffing swirls. So anyway, what I do at the end of the night when I am done, I put a stopper in the kitchen sink. My wife loves this. Not. I do steaming hot water, fill up the sink with Dawn dish soap. I put the pads face down, let them float in the hot water. Go to sleep. The next morning I get up, turn the hot water on, use the sprayer, spray them off, rinse them off, and then wring them out and then kind of let them dry that way. But I do like to use my pads when they're kind of damp. That's another trick. When you're doing your compounding, don't ever let that pad get wet. It even says it on the bottles. Don't let it get dry. Keep it wet. I might have said don't let it get wet. Don't let it get dry. Keep it wet. So I like to use just water, not soap with it, just water. And anyway. So there's some things you can do to see if you have holograms or buffing swirls. This is one of the things I use. It's a little LED headlamp for your head. And as you're sitting there working that, you can see into the paint with that light. And if there's a buffing swirl or a hologram in there, you'll see it. And anyway, so if you just go to 3000 and do a wool pad, you're probably going to get buffing swirls, because I always did, especially in black and fresh paint, because fresh paint sucks. It's soft, man. The best thing about doing fresh paint is it sands so much easier. You don't have to go through all the grades of paper, 600, 800, 1000, 12, 15, you know. You can kind of skip a little bit because it'll sand. Like the rear area back here, I actually done all around the taillights and the tail pan in 1500 because I don't care if that's lumpy. You usually want to start with a lower grade to keep lumpiness out. But if your paint's hard as a rock, you're really going to have to work on it. But as in my case, it's going pretty good. So anyway, guys, just tips and tricks and pretty much an update on the 55. I'm going to go ahead and get back on it. I might show my pads here. This is just what I use. And this is kind of a no-no to a lot of the professional detailers out there. This is a 12-pack of great value microfibers. These are cleaning microfibers. These are pretty harsh, actually. They're kind of rough. I mean, they're soft, but they're rough for fresh paint. I get these at Walmart in the house cleaning section, like where the brooms and mops and all that stuff are. This is like $8 for a 12-pack of these. I use these for a lot of stuff, like wiping down the car with a wet rag. Also, I use this after I compound with my number one compound on the buffer on the car. I go back with a brand new one with number one compound on it, and I go one direction and wipe it one direction pretty firm, then go back with a brand new dry one and wipe it the same direction. And it just kind of helps to keep you from getting buffing swirls or holograms. If you might have started to get one in an area, that will help knock it out. So, but the other thing I do is this is my old number one compound. It's pretty much empty, so I put tap water in it and I shook it up so it's real liquidy. It's not supposed to be that thin. And I put that on that rag. Instead of just throwing this away, I use it thinned out, pretty soaked on that rag, and that's how I wipe it one direction is with this. So might keep that in mind. I don't do that with the number 2 and number 3. Just do it with that. Now when I get to stage 2 and stage 3, I use these. These are also from Walmart. These are pretty big. Now these are in the automotive section at Walmart, and you get a 6-pack of them for $7. And these are really soft, almost fleecy-like. And these work really awesome, especially for your final glaze, because those cleaning microfibers actually will scratch if you're not careful. And I wouldn't ever wash those in the washing machine and dry them and then use them, because they put lint on everything after that. When they're new, they pick stuff up, but after they're washed and dried, they don't pick up worth of crap. And they also might get a little piece of something hard in there, and it would scratch your paint. So I always, when I'm finished with the buff, the good rags, I wash in the washing machine by themselves twice in hot water, and then they just get turned into shop rags, or cleaning the counters in the house or whatever, But anyway, guys, I'm going to get to work. I just thought I would give some tips and tidbits of just what I do. And again, I cannot phrase it enough. This is what I do. I don't care how anybody else does it. That's the results I get.